Scotland isn't the only country that can make great single malt whiskey. There are plenty of places around the world that are making top-notch examples of the category. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and this week I'm going to be telling you about 7 different fantastic examples of single malt whiskey you can get right now in Ireland. First off, we're going to start with Teeling Single Malt Whisky. Teeling are a Dublin-based distillery located right in the capital of Ireland, and they are making some fantastic whiskey, and this is their single malt expression. Now, originally they were sourcing whiskey for their expressions, but since they've been able to get some stock matured in different casks, they've been able to switch over to their own distillate, and that's what this is right here. It is a very nice whiskey, originally aged in bourbon casks and then finished off in 5 different types of wine casks to give it a really fresh and fruity and vibrant flavor on the nose, into the palate, and onto the finish. The head distiller said it's one of the most complicated whiskeys he's ever worked on because trying to get a consistent batch every year out to the market with different wine cask influences does make it a bit of a challenge, but it's a fantastic little whiskey. Comes through very well, very approachable. Comes in at 46% or 92 proof, so it's a very, very nice, easy drinking whiskey, and it's one you should keep an eye out for. Next up, we've also got a complex little whiskey. This is the Storm Chaser Single Malt from Sailor's Home Irish Whiskey. This is a quadruple casked whiskey. Now, the Teeling Single Malt had 5 casks. This has 4 casks. It was aged in bourbon casks, virgin oak casks, stout casks, and Madeira wine casks. So you do get a lot of different notes coming through. You get oak spice, you get a bit of kind of tropical fruits, you get a bit of coffee and espresso, and you do get a nice bit of kind of vanilla and butterscotch that came through from those bourbon casks. It's a very nice, simple to enjoy whiskey, but it does have a fair bit of complexity behind it. Like, it's a good single malt that comes through, but when you taste it, when you kind of sit with it, you do get a nice profile coming through from all those different casks. It also comes in at 46% alcohol, so it is a very nice full flavored whiskey that's not going to be too hot. You don't really need to dilute it down. It just gives a solid drinking experience right out of the bottle. For another easy drinking Irish whiskey, we've got this, the Core Single Malt Whiskey from Dingle. Now, Dingle were kind of known for their batches of whiskey. They released 6 different batches of single malt whiskey while they were aging up their stock of whiskey to have a core release, and that's what this is right here. It is a very good, simple to drink whiskey, but it comes through with loads of flavor. It comes in at 46.3%, so again, nice profile on the glass, nice bit of weight, not too hot, but full of flavor. It was aged for 41% of the whiskey was aged in bourbon casks and 59% was aged in PX sherry casks, so it gives you a lot of sweetness, but also a lot of kind of rich, kind of juicy, syrupy, fruity notes on the back end, backed up by a really solid core of malt. Now, Dingle's malt, it has this very nice kind of herbal, almost botanical note to it. Comes through really, really well. As a core product, this is a fantastic whiskey for them to be coming out with, and if you do see it on the shelves, it's definitely one to keep an eye out for because it's a fantastic whiskey. Speaking of PX sherry influence on a whiskey, this is the PX I Love You from the Whistler. So this is a sourced whiskey that the Bourbon distillery with their brand name, the Whistler, have sourced. So it's a very, very nice sourced whiskey that spent most part of its initial life in bourbon casks before getting a full finish in PX sherry casks. That's Pedro Jimenez sherry. Gives you so much juicy, fruity, rich notes. It's named the PX I Love You because that PX sherry influence really does come through. If you are looking for a rich, syrupy sherry bomb, this is the kind of whiskey to look out for. And when Bourbon are coming out with their own stocks as they move from sourced liquid into their own distilled liquid, definitely keep an eye out because they've got some fantastic casks in their program where they're maturing some really good influence from those casks into their whiskey, and definitely one to keep an eye out for. If you're a fan of malty sherry bombs, the PX I Love You from Whistler, definitely give it a check. For a different kind of single malt sherry bomb, we've got this, the Sexton Single Malt Whisky from the Sexton Company. The Sexton are an offshoot of Bushmills Distillery. It's not like a distillery by itself, so if you're familiar with Bushmills, you will know that you're going to get a quality product when you get this. Like, the Bushmills malt is very well known, very well regarded, and it is entirely used in this whiskey here. This is a single malt whiskey which was entirely aged in Oloroso sherry cask. So whereas the PX sherry is heavy and syrupy and dense. Oloroso sherry, a bit lighter, a bit fruitier, gives you a bit of nutty notes and some kind of lighter fruits rather than those darker syrupy fruit notes, and it does pair very well with the Bushmills kind of classic malt. It has this kind of light fruity note in their malt, and I think it came through really well. It does come in at 40% ABV, so it is a bit lighter than the other whiskies I have mentioned up to now, but it is I think the best-selling Irish single malt whiskey in America, probably for a reason, because it is a very nice whiskey. It's also a very eye-catching bottle, so if this is on your shelf, you're probably going to see it and you might want to give it a try. Next up, for a whiskey that's a little bit more modern, we've got the double barrel single malt from Two Stacks that's available in a bottle or in a can. So this is one of their dram in a can ranges. They have their kind of blended dram in a can whiskey, which is obviously a very nice blended whiskey in a can. This right here is the single malt whiskey in a can. It's the same whiskey, just in a 100ml can. You can get 4-packs, or I think some shops do sell them individually. This is a solid whiskey. It is a sourced whiskey again. Two Stacks are bottlers and blenders. What they do is they get really good whiskeys and they blend them together, and they're very transparent about their blending. So this here says it is 40% of it is double distilled malt aged in bourbon casks, 50% of it is triple distilled malt aged in Oloroso sherry casks, and 10% of it is peated malt, which is aged in bourbon casks. So it does give you a little bit of a peat smoke. It gives you a little bit of a kind of a rounder complexity, maybe a little bit similar to some scotches. If you're used to drinking scotches, this might be more in that profile of a blended whiskey that comes through with a little bit of smoke at the end. Very nice, very tasty whiskey, and very, very modern. And lastly, if you're a person who does like peated or smoky whiskies, we're going to finish where we started with the Teeling Distillery's Black Pits single malt whiskey. This is a very, very nice and interesting kind of smoky whiskey. So originally this was distilled, or it was peated to 55 ppm. That's a level of the amount of peat smoke that's in the malted barley. 40 is typically considered quite high, quite strong. So 55 is a very, very heavily peated original kind of whiskey. But what they did with the whiskey was they distilled it 3 times, which does cut it down a bit. So it brings it actually down to, in the final product, about 15 ppm. So it's about a third or so of the amount of peat smoke that originally had ends up in the final product, and it gives you this rich kind of sweet barbecue smoky note to it that's not acrid or sharp or kind of like burning tires. It's more of a sweet note that comes through into the whiskey. So if you do like kind of sweet peaty whiskies, this is definitely one to keep an eye out for. They do have a cask strength version of it that comes in at 56.5% ABV. The regular one comes in at 46% ABV. So if you do like a heavier duty, more full flavored one, keep an eye out for this. But this is, I believe, just a limited edition one for now. I think it's only available in Ireland, but you should be able to get the Black Pits anywhere in the world, and it's a very nice whiskey to keep an eye out for. So there you have it, 7 top-notch Irish single malt whiskies that you should keep an eye out for next time you're in the mood for a single malt whiskey. But do you have a favorite Irish single malt whiskey? If it's not up on this table, make sure to let me know down in the comments below, and while you're there, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesdays, I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey on Fridays, and I put out fun videos like this every now and then on a Monday. So if you want to see more like that, make sure you hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.